Hey, Auntie.
Hello, everybody. We're back. It's your favorite aunties. I am Paige Means Hopper. I am your host, and I'm the author of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery and the movement of the same name. I am joined here by two beautiful ladies, Auntie Rosemary and Auntie Genoa. And we also have a special guest, Uncle Michael Hopper, but we'll get to him in just a moment. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, ladies, and say hello to our friendly audience.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, hello. I am Auntie Rosemary. I'm ready to give of myself and give God given gifts. So just sit back and get ready.
Get ready for her. Get ready for her.
Ready.
Good evening. This is Auntie Genoa. My usual saying, your own experience is not necessarily the best teacher. Someone else's is. If you'll listen, welcome. Come on in.
Thank you, aunties. And we have a very special guest with us here tonight. He is Michael L. Hopper, Uncle Michael. He is one of America's foremost authorities on temporary governmental aid to families. He is a professor, he's a lecturer, and he's a consultant. And we are just super excited to have him here tonight to talk about this exciting topic. So go ahead and say a little bit about yourself there, Mr. Hopper.
It's an honor, a pleasure to be on the program. I've been watching what you all been doing with the Aunties program, and I'm really, really pleased. It's a great way to bring a challenging subjects in a very entertaining and engaging kind of way. So I appreciate it being part. And so since that's interesting. In America, March is Women's History Month, but with the aunties, it's Men's Month. So I
Black
like
men. Black men.
Right.
It's both. It doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be either or. It's but here, yes, we're celebrating Black men.
So I find it a pleasure to be here in March with you all.
Thank you. We're excited to have you here. And for those who don't know, Michael Hopper is related to me in a very special way. He is my husband. But tonight, he is the expert as well. So as usual, I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit from the book tonight, and then I will get right into throwing the topic to the aunties and to Uncle Michael. And by the way, both of you aunties look gorgeous tonight. And Mr. Hopper, you look exceptionally handsome.
Thank you.
but you're not biased, right?
Not at all. Not at all. Okay, so getting on to the book. I'm going to be reading from page 155. This book is called Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. And I am again the author, and I'm going to be starting on page 155. And the topic I'm going to be reading from tonight in the book is hopelessness and helplessness. For those of you who don't know, this book is full of 10 of the most devastating wounds to African Americans, but there's also a lot of hope in the book as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start on page 155. It says, "We are not hopeless, and we are certainly not helpless. Yet sometimes we behave as if we're both. Why do we act this way? In order for slavery to work, slave masters had to instill the belief into the enslaved that the masters were the highest authority, like demigods. Everything the enslaved needed for daily survival, food, water, clothing, and shelter, was provided by the owners. Even personal and familial relationships were orchestrated and manipulated according to the master's agenda and will. And so slaves were understandably exceedingly dependent on slave owners for their very existence. This is not an excuse for what we see today, with families living on government benefits for generations. But the source of this behavior provides a very good reason for patterns of hopelessness and helplessness that we may experience or witness. These wounds in tandem carry a distinct feeling a pronounced heaviness, like dark clouds looming overhead. I remember myself and a group of fellow students showing up spontaneously at Nickerson Gardens in Los Angeles, which is government housing, or the projects. We wanted to interview folks for filming we were doing about the 10th anniversary of the 1992 LA uprising. First, the entire landscape reminded us of prisons, with only one way in and one way out. Then we noticed large numbers painted atop each housing unit. We later learned this was to make easy and accurate identification for police helicopters flying overhead. But the thing that hit us the most was the people. We could tell they were living in a lot of fear, which I believe was because they mistook us for news crews and wanted nothing to do with us, even though we explained who we were and showed them our student IDs. Nah, I ain't got nothing to say about that. When we finally got a small group of brothers to speak with us, they would only allow audio, no video. One brother explained what happened to him the night of the uprising. He said the federal government had issued U.S. Army tanks to patrol Nickerson Gardens. Their job was to keep all the residents locked down behind the walls. He said he wanted to check on his family in other parts of the city because communication had been cut off. At some point, he attempted to run to a wall and jump over and out into the streets. He was shot in the back as he was running. It took a very long time for help to arrive, and he almost died. The other brothers standing in our group co-signed everything he said. What reason would they have to lie to us? The point of the story is this. There are generations of Black families who remain at the mercy of government assistance, some bound by their own limited beliefs, others locked into the system by design. Whatever the case may be, when we live in communities that are targeted and under attack by police, it makes it very difficult to gain freedom and independence. Can it be done? Of course. And there are many who do escape. But like our ancestors, there are also many who find it very difficult to shake it off and come out from under the wounds of hopelessness and helplessness, wounds that tell them every day that they must depend on the man for survival, for housing, transportation, and education, no matter how subpar those provisions may be. The thoughts that derive from these beliefs too often play on a continuous loop in our minds. We have been programmed and trained to be helpless, and once we have existed in this state long enough, it becomes, this is just the way things are. Or worse, this is just the way I am. For the record, there is nothing wrong with utilizing government funding temporarily. For example, to transition into an independent lifestyle. That is what it's there for. However, to remain bogged down in that lifestyle permanently is a travesty and can cause us to be stuck for a lifetime. We forget there are options. It's like the allegory of fleas in a jar. It's said that you can train a flea to stay in a jar even when the lid is removed. You can place the flea in the jar with the lid on tight. Fleas have a natural instinct to jump. So they jump and jump and jump in an attempt to escape the jar trap. But each time they jump, they hit the lid. After a time, they stop trying to escape. Remove the lid, and the flea will no longer jump. Why? Because it's been trained to believe that it's impossible to escape. They become resigned to their limits. I don't know if fleas experience thoughts and feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. It doesn't matter. Humans certainly can. There's a larger, more intelligent creature that might make a better analogy. The elephant. Trainers tie a baby elephant's leg to a post with a chain. The baby elephant struggles to set itself free. After so many attempts, it stops struggling, believing that it will never work. Long after, when the elephant is huge, the trainer can simply tie the elephant to the post by a thin rope. The elephant could easily break free. But it's been programmed to believe that as long as there's a resistance, a restraint, and a pole, it is impossible to move. So it remains trapped, hopeless, and helpless to free itself from its current condition. It believes that only the trainer can set it free. Sound familiar? In too many cases, Black Americans have adopted the false belief that we are hopeless and helpless to improve our current condition beyond a certain point. We are waiting for a modern day master to help us. We are hoping for permission and assistance that will never come. Instead, we must be empowered to jump higher, to move beyond our proverbial jars and break free from our proverbial posts. Disappointment and resignation are vital features of these wounds. They come from thwarted opportunities, feeling somehow robbed or cheated out of a certain position in life, reduced, demoted, and relegated to a lesser lifestyle, yet confused as to how to climb out of this hole. It's as though we've been kicked out of our calling. We feel our mission has somehow been aborted, and we're unable to fulfill our designated purpose. We believe we have exerted all of our energy and lack the motivation to try again, although we desperately want to. These wounds tell us we will never get there, so why try? We might often think or even find ourselves saying out loud, "I don't care," which is far from what we're feeling deep inside.
Right.
Hopelessness and helplessness. What are we thinking about that, special guest and aunties?
It resonates for me. I mean, I've been working for about over 35 years in human services, 10 years in the foster care system, and now the past 16 years in the welfare system. This is cash aid for parents that have a dependent child, but need government assistance to be able to help them. As you mentioned, in America, there was no time limit. A family could be receiving cash aid, welfare as they call it, for years. But it was in 1996 that in America, under the Clinton administration and Congress at that point, changed the welfare system in America as we knew it, to where now there were time limits. So any parent can only be on welfare, and they call it TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, up to 5 years. Now in California, where we reside, it is 5. They reinstated it. It's back to 5 years. But in other states in America, it's less. The states have some autonomy as to what they can do. But the one thing which I've noticed as it relates to what you were sharing in the book is, and I've seen this, where in Los Angeles County, we're the most populous county in America, out of the little over 3,000 counties in America, 10 million people, the most populous. Disproportionately, Black people, African Americans are receiving the aid.
Yes.
But what's challenging with that, living in Los Angeles, is where it's not enough money. I mean, to be able to even make it, and it's designed that way. Where 2019 there was a report that came out that said one parent and one child living together would need about $77,000 every year to just live comfortably in Los Angeles County.
77,000 a year,
and this is after taxes. After taxes, right? So, but with the cash aid, I looked at it. That same one parent with one child receives like $895 a month in cash aid. About $360 in food benefits. It's about $15,000 a year. So that's only 20% of what it takes to actually live comfortably in Los Angeles. So when families are existing with like 20% of what's really needed, that's a recipe for disaster. And so I've been seeing, out of the years, I'm seeing the connection where there's and I'm seeing the rise with my families and other families where one system, the welfare system, it seems to be feeding into the foster care system, where children are being taken away from their parents because of what maybe is perceived to be neglect, abuse, physical and other things. And where in Los Angeles County, Black people, African Americans, we only represent 8% of the county, but yet in February of this year, African Americans, Black folks were reported to CPS, Child Protective Services, 23% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's trauma, and then where there's supposed to be family reunification or family preservation, it feels as I'm seeing the rise where it's more that the county is quick to remove children from their parents.
What are some of the reasons they give for that removal?
Well, I mean, if there's perceived to be neglect, perceived to be abuse, but it's questionable. Talking with some of the parents, it's questionable if it's just about did a really holistic assessment really was it made, or was it just quickly to take the children? Because what I've seen in the 10 years of working in the foster care system, it's like, wait a minute, people are getting paid for the breakup of our families, and not the keeping together of our families. And mind you, it takes more money, it takes effort, it takes work. And what I found out was that LA County, the state is giving us $200 million just because we need to do a better job with preserving families. Mm-hmm. If families are in crisis, but the heart and the initiative is there, let's give them wraparound. Let's support them when it comes down to it. But so we'll see if that happens. But what's interesting, just stepping back and looking, how one system, the welfare system, is feeding into the foster care system, but then out of the foster care system, you see how it's feeding into the criminal justice system.
Wow.
Where there was a report with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. They asked, and again, black men, Black people, Black women, men and women, African Americans are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice, in the prison system out here in California. But when they surveyed Black men, 33% of them said, were you ever at any time in your life as a minor a ward of the court? Were you ever in foster care? Were you ever in a group home? Were you ever in juvenile hall? And 33% of the men in prison, Black men in the prison, said, I was.
Wow.
So you see how one system's feeding into another system, feeding into another system, and where the need to be healed of the wounds that you talk about in the book is so important. I mean, because like you said, it's almost learned helplessness. So the reproach, the disdain, the value of Black life. I mean, families see it, we see it, we feel it, and in some cases, we've been trained and conditioned to even treat each other this way. But the thing which I think to break the cycle is education, but it's education. That's why I'm working in a community college that's serving directly parents on receiving.
Right. And you're at the college level. We had Gary Hardy on last week, who is an expert in politics and education in America, who was also saying that the school to prison pipeline we can literally put our finger in the dike of it or put our hand on the pipe and stop it in some sense through the educational system, as long as people are willing to work with the family holistically. And I'm wondering, before I pass it to the aunties, I'm wondering if that, 20% of what they need to survive. So $77,000 is what they get. No, $77,000 is what they get, right?
It's what they need.
Is what they need.
One parent with one child needs in Los Angeles needs.
And they get 15,000 approximately. Correct. So my point is that's only 20% of what they need. So they receive 15,000. They need a minimum of 77,000 to really survive in California. I'm wondering if, because they don't have enough money, then that may mean that they don't have enough to feed their children, which means that they may be going to school hungry, which is what a lot we talked about last week, and with Principal Tammy in Oakland at Horace Mann School, that can be perceived as malnutrition, like a person may be starving their children, and that's a form of abuse. I mean, that's just one form. And then they may not have enough for clothes, and so the children are wearing clothes that haven't been washed. They don't have enough to wash clothes. So it is a vicious cycle.
And then somebody reports it, and then they come out and they say, okay, I mean, even in cases where it's like, okay, the child is not abused on any marks, but they're like, okay, they're hungry, or they don't
All the
they wear the
time.
same clothes, because they don't have enough, and so that's it's not as though parents don't want to, but it's the learning how to. And a lot of times, with the welfare reform that took place in 1996, the push was more towards you need a job, go to work, rather than education, learn a trade that for employment that's more in demand, so you can make a livable wage and take better care of your family.
Got
And
you.
what I love, because I see that as well. I mean, that's why I still do what I do here.
Yes.
Is that I'm seeing families, parents, mothers and fathers,
Yes.
who are learning new trades and skills, and they're just brilliant. I mean, it's amazing what they do, brilliant. But they take on jobs. I mean, they're working with Tesla. They're opening up their own businesses. I mean, they're owning homes. I mean,
Got you. Yes. So I just wanted to.
We need more of that.
Yeah. Before we go deeper down that trail, I wanted to let the people know what you do at Los Angeles Trade Tech. And that is for the last 20 plus years, he's been helping parents go from welfare to work,
right,
through learning a trade. And so I want to throw it to the aunties now and give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have of the guest, or bring up any comments, anything that you have to share in the conversation.
Well, that was not my experience when I was raising my children. I was out here when my children were young.
In California.
In California, I had my son and my daughter, and I was only able to get help with one child. And it wasn't that much back then. So I was taking care of my children with enough money just for me and one child. And while I was going to school, and I was going to school for EMT medical assisting. And at the end of all of that, all I got was a bill. I wasn't able to go into the field that I went to school for. And so we still struggled. Stuff wasn't enough. And then after everything, I had to go to work, and I had to work all these long hours. So I wasn't at home a lot. Right. And the food that my children were eating, they were tired of it, but that's all I had. And they ate, and I would give it to them before I would give it to me.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot.
I would give it to them before I give it to me. And you always have somebody that has their mouth on you, but they're not helping.
Right.
They have their mouth on you, but they're not helping. And they would have all these programs. I told one, you need to check and see, just if I'm going to school for a trade, and just because I get a job and it's a burger job, that's not what I want. That's not what I paid all this money to come to your school for. But you said, oh yes, we have 85% employment. Well, what are the people doing?
What type of employment? That's true. That's true.
What are they doing? And then because the field was fairly new when I went into it, for seeing people of color, I got turned down a lot. And then when I found somebody that was willing to hire me, they weren't paying the going wage for that position. They hired me for what they had it before, like, okay, medical assisting. I took lab and phlebotomy and all this other stuff, but I got hired as a nursing assistant. That's taking care of older people in the nursing home.
Like a CNA position, like a CNA?
Well,
certified nursing assistant, like that, or?
No, it wasn't even like that. Basically, what you were just somebody that was like a caretaker in the nursing home, and nurses gave you all the jobs that they didn't want to do.
Okay, how long were you on government assistance, if I can ask?
Oh my goodness!
Was it more than 2 years?
It was just under that, because I went back home to Michigan at this point.
Okay, and then you took another route, so you didn't stay on it, and you're not on it. I mean, you didn't stay on it for long.
it was terrible, because if you're a person that don't know how to work the system, or if you're one of them people that's trying to live honestly and leave a good example for your children, you're not going to make it in the system. You're going to fall through the cracks.
So do you feel at that point that the system helped or hindered? Because again, remember, the topic is government assistance, help or hindrance. And so we're trying to get at and kind of ferret out whether, government assistance is a help or
it helped the people that worked in the program. It didn't really help the families. They were just there.
When you say people who work in the program, what do you mean? I don't know what
I'm
you
talking
mean.
About the social workers, the people that
Oh,
was making all the cards. It helped the system,
The government.
so they can feel like they're doing something. But a lot of families, not just mine, was falling through the cracks. We're struggling, suffering, and everything. And I did everything, and I didn't get the benefit of what they were supposed to provide, because they just want to look like they're doing something, but they weren't doing anything except for helping their own selves.
Wow. Interesting. Auntie Rosemary?
Yeah, I wanted to go back with Uncle Michael was talking about, the children being taken away. And I remember this particular woman, because I worked in housing, affordable housing, for a long time. And I noticed that a lot of the parents always had to choose between food or Christmas toys, or just food and life, and the electric bill. But what I wanted to say about this one person, she got her child taken away, and I don't know why, but in the system, her child ended up dying. Because she went to a foster home, and of course that foster home did something to her, and she died. So she was understandably, she was very hurt, bitter, and the system provided nothing for her. They were fighting against her because she wanted to sue, and she wanted to, she wanted help, because it gave her a mental breakdown. So it's a lot of things within the system that doesn't, to me, help a lot of families what they really need. To me, I think it's a lot of embarrassment goes along with it. I remember being a child, going to the store with those food stamps, and it was very embarrassing because you couldn't count them fast, and people would huff and puff, and then the clerk would roll her eyes and everything. It was horrible as a child, with that. So it's a lot of things with that, like Uncle Michael was saying, with all of the separation of family, and then you lose your dignity. Then you don't have enough, even with the programs of the affordable housing, because the 1-bedroom at 30% is like maybe $600, but there's 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, 20-year wait for those. It should.
Well, someone might just say then, why don't you just pull yourselves up by the bootstraps? Why are you on the government in the first place? What is it that got you there? It's not our fault that you have all those children. It's not our fault that you're not educated. It's not our fault that you don't have skills. Yeah. You all ought to just get out there and do what you need to do in order to not have to be on it in the first place. So the question becomes, is it a safety net for families? Is it social support? Or is it social control? Or is it victimhood? Like, what's really going on here? Because, we get down to the root of things here. Yeah. And so let's talk about it, because there is that faction in America that says exactly that. As a matter of fact, we just had a Facebook user come up to tell us that it's a hindrance.
It is.
And so we just definitely want to ask for more participation, more questions, more comments from our viewers, because we're here for you. And we just want to ferret this out, because a lot of times on these, not our platform, but platforms similar, we just talk about all the problems, and we talk about them, and we moan and we gripe. But what is going on here? And what do we do about it? And Jacqueline, hi, Jacqueline. She says, I think when you're in dire need, some help is better than no help. Just don't stay there. Absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah,
And I really love and appreciate what Uncle Michael does at his campus, because he is literally helping people go from the system, which he already has explained as a cyclic monster of a system, one system feeding into the next, and he removes that factor, that pipeline. He takes students out of that pipeline or redirects them to another pipeline, which takes them into jobs and being productive citizens, right?
and entrepreneurship. Yeah, correct.
Entrepreneurship.
I mean, in America, I mean, most families are like 1 or 2 paychecks away from being on the streets themselves.
Why?
Right now.
Why? Why?
So the safety net that we've decided as a society in America to let's make sure at least we have that in place, and particularly for children, because again, we're talking about adults, but what can we do to support the children when it comes down to it that are with these parents? So it is a safety net. It's there to support, but more the intentionality has been put into place to really help folks, but it's still a refining process.
Well, why do we need it? Why are families going into this system? Why do we need it? What is happening at the root of it all? What's happening?
Well, when we look back even more and more and more,
let's look back.
Decades back, when it comes down, even before there was even welfare, that's the way we know it in America. I mean, we go back into like the Depression. But then the idea, if we talk about Jim Crow, if we talk about different laws that were set up in place to specifically keep African Americans, Black people away from certain housing, from certain jobs. I mean, from certain, you could be well trained, but their employers are still not going to hire you. Well, why? Well, because we don't hire Black people. I mean, so the continuance of discrimination and wealth being taken or not even allowed to be able to access has been there. We've inherited this from decades of really that's been very intentional.
Okay, we have a Facebook user that says we have a Facebook user who's saying that it goes back to Reconstruction. I want you to say a little bit more about that, viewer, so that we can take a hold of that and address it more carefully. Okay. Live shackle free with the hi, Dr. Ivanka. So it aids in separation of the family unit, particularly Section 8, where in many cases, if women marry the father of their children, they will no longer qualify for the voucher. So if the woman marries the father of her children, she won't qualify for a voucher. But if a man and woman marry in the first place before they start having children, then is there a need for a voucher?
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because these are the things that we need to look at. These are the things that society is saying. And we do need to look and see, like, what is it with us? Not the system, what's going wrong with the system, because why are we in there in the first place? And regardless of Reconstruction, regardless of Jim Crow, regardless of all those things, there were still those who were able to become doctors and entrepreneurs and attorneys and just, as I said,
that's a small number compared to the masses of African Americans.
But why were those small? Why was that small number able to achieve it and not the others?
Well, I mean, if we start to look, well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Auntie Genoa. Go ahead. You had.
Well, this is what I was going to say, because when she mentioned Section 8, the thing is, I was divorced. And I wasn't getting any child support, so the voucher took the place of the child support. But they used the area I was living in the Antelope Valley in California. They used the Section 8 to raise all the rents out there, because the rents were reasonable. And what they did when people start moving out there with their voucher, that they were raising the rents, like, okay, if you let me have this house, the rent might be like $5 something or whatever, and they would say, oh, well, we'll pay you $1,000 if you let us move in here. And so what they did is they used the system to raise all the rents out there, and the people that were living out there and that didn't have the voucher, got angry, but it was the system and the greedy landlords, and they blamed the people. And what happened is, the newspaper had a campaign. So anybody that had Section 8, they posted this number, and there's a rash of calls. They just start calling on people, and a lot of people, because I was driving the bus out there, they became homeless because they lost their vouchers because of this campaign against the poor people of color out there, and because they were mad. And I heard the story over and over again, even for me, because what happens is, if you level up and you make more money, then the help that they don't give you a chance to get on your feet. They take the cushion away, like, immediately.
They don't give you a chance to get on your feet.
No, they do not give you a chance.
Here's what I'm looking at, and here's what I was faced with when I told people what the topic would be. They don't give us a chance. They divert the money. They take away the benefits. They don't give us enough. It's going right back to the wounds of helplessness and hopelessness. Mm-hmm. And at the root of that is absolutely learned helplessness. And so let's give an example of an Asian family, or one that I know specifically, a Latino family that moved next door to us when we lived in central Los Angeles. They had nothing. They had less than nothing. Mm-hmm. So what they did is 4 to 5 families moved into an apartment together. Mm-hmm. Is that an ideal situation? Absolutely not. Is it comfortable? Absolutely not. Is it hard? Is it tough? Is it difficult? Yes. But they did. And they collected cans, and they cut lawns, and they did odd jobs, and they did whatever they had to do so that they could, one at a time, move one of the families out of the house into their own space, or where 2 of them could move together, or they sent one of their young people to college or to get a trade, and they worked together in order to produce the income that they needed to produce, that they didn't need and couldn't even obtain benefits because they weren't actually in the country legally. So understand that there is a system that's been set up against us. I mean, we've known that for centuries now. Mm-hmm. We knew that coming out of slavery. Mm-hmm. So why are we still here? No, you didn't, Jacqueline.
I remember that movie.
Claudine with Diane Carroll. Yes, and the hoops you had to jump through for inadequate help. But the question is then, Jacqueline, how did Claudine end up in that situation in the first place?
You know what? It is. It reminds me of that movie too. But you know what? It goes back to slavery. Everything is the same. It's just that it's a new way of doing things. Control of the housing, control of where you eat and where you live, and enough money to buy food, and what school and area you're going to go to, or you're going to get out of this area. Years ago, I went to visit one of my friends, and she lived in all white. She was the only Black, all white area. And something happened to her. We had to call an ambulance. I've never seen them get there so fast. When they got there and they walked in and they saw that we were Black, they was hesitant about helping us. They looked like, what are we doing here? What are you doing here? So it's the services in that we
where are our Black EMTs and ambulance services?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and there are folks who are trying. I met a fire captain here in city of Los Angeles. He was saying, I'm willing to try to recruit more African Americans to go into the field because there was such a huge need. So it is a matter where people are stepping up. I mean, different communities need to step up more, and they are, but just we need more of it. Like, for instance, with the whole thing with the breakup of families, so quick to pull the trigger to do it. When we first moved down to Los Angeles in 2000, I remember there was a whole community. I wouldn't call them the Black Panthers or anything like that, but there was a whole wide range of Black people in Los Angeles that were insisting that no, you're not going to be quick to pull the families. And so it was that advocacy. It was that push. It was that not on their watch. And the county, the government did respond by doing more wraparound services. Now, we don't have people continually at folks to say this is the right thing to do. Then the structure, the system can kind of go back to its default setting of removing children's quicker to remove children. But it's rather than depending on others, it's what I'm seeing is where families, parents, communities, neighborhoods are stepping up to fill that void of leadership and accountability, but also being self-accountable and taking initiative.
And that comes with a change of mindset.
And it most definitely is a change of mindset. I mean, I feel like what we have to do in our community college sector of all the CalWorks programs, welfare to work programs at the community colleges, we're having to now step up our efforts to address even more the mindset. Because again, that learned helplessness, I've seen it over the years where there's some, it's hard to break free, but I've seen with others, they're only receiving welfare cash aid for maybe a few months. And
what would you say is the success rate of welfare to work programs, the CalWorks and that? What would you say is the success rate?
That I'm not sure. That's something that, but if I would estimate, I don't think it's high enough. To be quite honest, I don't think it's high enough, to be quite honest. And that's the intentionality that everybody that plays a part, all the stakeholders, including the parents themselves, all of us together, have to be more intentional in what we're doing. And the crisis that's happening right now in California with the theft that's taking place with people's benefits, I think it's forcing folks to have to do beyond what they've been used to doing. That's the parents, counties, all of us have to step up and do something different than what we have been doing. And I think it's horrible, but it's a good thing.
I want you to talk to us about what that is, and we can discuss that. But I wanted to bring back up Dr. Yovanka's comment really quickly so that we can address that, because I love it when people participate, and I don't want to overlook that. Generations of family units who were able to advance from homes purchased with loans from the GI Bill, which were not granted to Black veterans.
True.
Okay, so then it must have been the white families then if they weren't granted to Black veterans. This funds better schools for kids born into this. So again, the system undergirds those who don't look like us, but it doesn't support us as readily as it does others, and especially with housing. That's a good point. So I want you to go ahead and talk to us then about what's been happening. Yes, there is a need for soft skills training for this to even begin to have more success. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to get into. We're probably going to need to do a part 2. But right now, I would love to give the floor to Uncle Michael so that he can explain to us what's been going on with these EBT cards.
So in California, as well as with pretty much most of the other states, Auntie Rosa Marie talked about how food stamps used to be literally food stamps that folks would take. Now everything's like on an actual card, but it's a card without a smart chip. So long story short, what's been happening in California, but I've noticed it's also happening in other states in America, where there have been people that have put where people use their card to swipe to buy groceries or certain items with their government sanctioned benefits card. Some folks have been putting like a skimming device to get the information from the card and their actual PIN number. Then they'll produce a counterfeit card. And then on the first of the month, with the strike of midnight, folks are going into ATM machines and with like 30, 40 cards with them, counterfeit cards, and just emptying out the parents' accounts. And so you have parents who are coming, later that day or the next day, they go to use their card or get the card to pay their rent or get groceries, and all the money's gone. So it's happening quite a bit in Los Angeles County. 2022, it was almost $20 million stolen. And the whole state of California, since this has been going on since 2021, at least it's been tracked, it's just escalated. It's over 44 million. And we're just keep getting more and more. So.
And who's doing it?
There was an article in the LA Times that there was some Romanian nationals that were coming in and doing this, but people believe they're actually working with other folks who are native Californians as well. I mean, it's not just the Romanian nationals that are coming in and doing this kind of theft. They're working with folks as well. They definitely believe so. But the thing is, it's a crisis situation. But what came to me, and came some of the others, and I got hearing this from parents, it's like, well, why not use this crisis situation as really motivation for people to get financially educated, to where people can say, you know what, government, I want my cash aid and my food benefits to go directly into a bank account that I own. And direct deposit that into a card that I own. And some of the families, they may have never owned an account. Their family may have never had a bank account because they're used to doing things a certain way. But it's kind of forcing folks to have to step up, mature, grow when it comes down to how they handle their finances. So we're doing a webinar with the county, and a lot of the parents are starting to take part this Thursday. But we hope it'll build traction where sharing with the parents, what do you need to do to try to reclaim your funds that were stolen, but also share the benefits and the responsibilities of having a bank account. But
so this might be one of those. This might
coaching.
So this might be one of those moments where, as we say, what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good, because it is a mind shift. It is a mindset shift to take it from, just gathering and getting the money for off of your EBT card, as opposed to literally beginning to learn how to do banking.
Right. And we're also coupling it with financial coaches that are used to working with parents, where if they say, yes, I want to open up a bank account, but I'm not quite sure how to do it in the direct deposit, connecting them with financial coaches that can help them for the next 3 months. Let's take care of the immediate crisis, the immediate need, but then let's look at what are your goals? Where do you want to go with this? I know it's like, I only got so much time with the county, with welfare. I have these aspirations. I want to do this. I want to learn this trade. I want to do this. I want to earn I want to make this kind of money. I want to learn how money works so I can have money work for me rather than me working for money.
Very good.
And then what I love about the one program we're partnering with, they're giving the parents $150 every month for the first 3 months that they're taking on the coaching. So it is breaking that cycle and helping them for breaking and the mindset. And I like what you're saying. It's the learned helplessness. So it's like, no, I really do believe one of the reasons why I do the work that I do, and I still do what I do with the parents that I do, is because I really do believe there's a part of the Bible that talks about that those that society thinks are the lesser than, the inferior ones, that you don't really need to deal with them. Those are the ones that God has endowed with the greater gifts.
The greater gifts.
So, and I've seen it. I mean, just the brilliance that comes across when folks start waking up and seeing what they can really do. It's amazing. I mean, I'm here to serve them, but it's just amazing what takes place. So it's just now we're having to be more intentional and getting more other people involved. And there are people they want to see wins. They want to see success. And we have no choice. But if we want our society to improve, we got to help those who are the most vulnerable right now. but we really got to do it and not just take care of ourselves, as Sister Auntie Genoa said.
That's right. And bring that back up again, DY. Jacqueline just said what I was literally thinking. We need to become more united and work together, support one another, share knowledge. We are not like the Hispanic family that I described. And what's interesting is that based on the stories that I've heard from my grandmother, from my mother, from my aunts and uncles, cousins, older cousins, we used to be.
Yes.
We
used to be. There's a saying in the Black American family that, well, there used to be, that if I got a pan of cornbread, you've got half a pan of cornbread.
That's right.
And that is to definitely, we do need to get back to that in order to get to where we want to be, is to love one another and unite together. But these wounds, and that's why I keep going back to the root of all of these things, is because the wounds are what's causing us to behave like backwards magnets toward one another. Can we also bring that comment back up again, DY? Michelle McIntyre. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Michelle says, no one in their right mind is going to exit welfare if a full-time job pays exactly the same,
That's the
the
welfare.
incentive is far better wages. Make work pay, otherwise forget it. Well, here's what I have to say about that. I have to stand in disagreement with you. Because when a person begins to heal from these wounds, as Mr. Michael Hopper was just saying, when a person begins to heal from these wounds, that's when they come into their true right mind. The mind that would cause someone to want to stay on welfare just because it pays the same amount as a job position it's a sick mind. It's a dull mind. It's a mind that is not in equilibrium with who they really are designed to be. And that's why healing the wounds of American slavery is so important, because we keep going back to, that the wounds came from slavery. Then we have to go back there to see what happened to us in the first place. Because what we endeavor to do is go back to the historical context, right, of what happened to us, the enslaved, and then bring it into a cultural construct, which is where we are now, working in this cyclic pattern set up by systems that are not designed to support us to be in our true right mind, and then to look to the future and what we can do about these things as a village. And so I love that. That's how I was raised. My great-grandparents, absolutely, to help one another. But here's what happened. And I say this in the book and I say it here and now. What happened is that it's sort of like the Stockholm syndrome, where you begin to take on the patterns and the beliefs of your oppressors or your captives.
Yes.
You to love what they love. Massa, are we sick?
Yes.
The white man's ice is colder. So that's why we have to get deliverance, really.
Yes.
Get purged of that old, moldy, wicked mindset that tells us that we need to stay in that same mind frame, even if it is only for 5 years. Even if the system says you can only be on welfare for 5 years. I love what Uncle Michael is saying. He's saying that as we are in the system, sure, everyone needs a little help sometime. But as we're in that system, what can the village do to help reprogram minds, to get us in a better financial education mindset, to get us into a mindset of home ownership and property ownership? We have a gentleman who's coming on next week. Oh my God. Oh my God. Is he ever going to help us with that part of our mindset, that we need to own property? That's a whole nother topic. But I just wanted to say that I really didn't think of it in that frame until you said it, Michael Hopper, when you said that this EBT scam, the scammers are causing people to need to shift their mindset and their way of being within this system. And so, when we read from the book, when we talk about the wounds, we're talking about the wounds, and it might seem tough, and it might seem, like, oh, well, why is she always going all down into the roots of all of this? We need to get beyond that. What I say is that part of our problem is that we want to say how great we are, and we are great. We are great. We're brilliant. We wouldn't be here. Our ancestors would not have survived for us to be here, to have the opportunity to be great, if they weren't equally as brilliant and resilient. But here's the thing. We need the healing of the wounds. How do we get healed if we don't go look and see what that is? And a lot of people, they want to they look at the wounds and it gets uncomfortable. And so they want to jump to solutions really fast. No, the best solution is to sit in it for a minute. Sit in it for a minute. And really look at, why are women out here just having all these babies? Why are men impregnating the sisters and leaving them behind? All of that comes from the plantation. Breeding, the multiple mates. And it's not even mates. It's literally breeding. No real relationship behind it other than the sex act itself. Does that sound familiar? You see? And so we have to sit in it in order to see why it's playing out now. The residual effects of it are playing out now. And then we can move. And actually, it's not even then. It's an and both conversation. As we're sitting in it, we get a feel for what we're sitting in. That will give us the best frame of reference to begin to think of solutions.
Yes.
Nobody likes to sit in discomfort. Nobody likes to sit in it. But as long as it's comfortable and we can make some money and kind of look pretty and look like everything's okay, we're not going to get down to the roots. And let me tell you this, I promise you this. I promise you this. When we begin to purge of these wounds, these hurts, these pains, this bitterness, this aggravation, this frustration, all of it, the rage, the fear, when we begin to purge of that, look how amazing we are with the wounds.
Exactly.
Carrying the burden. Imagine how much more great we can be.
Oh, come on now.
We're free from the wounds. And that's the goal, people. That's the goal. It's never just to dwell in the wounds. I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to go watch that show. I'm not going to read that book because she's just talking about our wounds. And who wants to go back and talk about that? We have to. That's like going to the physician, right? And not wanting the physician to look at your hurt or your pain or the broken bone or whatever it is. I'll just limp along. I'll just drag my leg. That's all right. If you gotta, re-break it or set it, that's gonna hurt. So I'll just drag this leg for the rest of my life. Walking wounded, and wounded healers, trying to heal each other based on our own wounds and just projecting that onto each other. So, yes, that's what we're about the business of doing. And we're close to wrapping now. And so we definitely need to do part 2.
Yes.
We definitely do, because we want to, talk about now, what it takes to move past where we are now. We talked about the historical context, right? We talked about where we are now with the EBT scamming and the families sort of, the children being moved out of the homes and, people having lesser access to those things that they need to really thrive, not just survive. So I want to give the last minute to Uncle Michael to give us a call to action. But first, I want to give at least 30 seconds to each of the aunties.
I'll be brief, but what I would highly recommend.
You're going to have the last word. Okay. The ladies are going to have their 30 seconds. We want to give you the honor of the absolute last word.
Okay.
You know what? I'm sitting here like just about to blow up because I have so much to contribute to this. But you know what I'm going to say is we got to stop being asleep, because we're walking around sleeping. We need to wake up. And that's when reading this book and then sitting in it, like you said, and then getting to know an early education of how to our finances is key. I'm going to stop right there.
Okay. Thank you for that. And you'll have an opportunity to get all the rest of it out too.
Well, I feel like we are masters at making things seem like it's all okay when it's not. And I feel like once we do the work and sit in it, we can really decide what it is that we want.
Yes, absolutely. And go right ahead, Uncle Michael. You got it.
I would say, and Auntie Rosemary mentioned, but I would highly recommend for those who feel moved about this topic, if you have not purchased the book, if you've not got the book, to please get the book. But with the book, I know one of the things that Paige is about to do is about to launch the trainings, because part of it is we're looking for partners. Because again, we're in Los Angeles, but then we're talking about all of America and even parts of the diaspora. But it takes a community that's more aware and really engaged in healing the wounds that are tough to look at, but we can do it together. But then empowered, you can have an impact on your neighborhood, in your area. I mean, the welfare system, the foster care system, the criminal justice system, there's a whole lot of people that look like us that need that support, but they need somebody to be able to come and bring the message with some level of healing themselves.
Yes.
I'm getting some healing. You can get some healing too. I'm here to support you. And so that's the next stage where we say, so the class that I think you're thinking about doing, Paige, with the book, I think is going to be extremely important.
And it's
Yeah.
coming right up.
Amen.
It's coming right
Amen.
up. As a matter of fact, I am meeting with the person who's helping me get that together very shortly. So we've got to go. Thank you for joining us so much. Thank you for your participation, audience. We are your aunties, and you can tell us anything, but there's a way to say everything. We're so excited you joined us tonight, and come back next week. We love you. Bye.
Hey, Auntie.